Good morning, hackers. You are listening to The Lowdown, the best podcast about hacker stuff, presented by Maze, here with Matt J, and I am Low Level. We are in the Planet Scale office here at the AI Engineering Conference in San Francisco, having a grand old time talking about AI security, and a variety of other topics. So, Matt, what are we doing today, man?
Why? Who put us on a plane? Like,
I know.
And who let two hackers physically break into a database company office?
Are they aware what they've done? Are they aware of what heist we are pulling off here?
They gave us the Wi-Fi too.
That's right. I'm actively on a database company's Wi-Fi. Insane.
Absolutely insane. Honestly, I kind of forgot how cool Silicon Valley and San Francisco specifically startup offices are. I know you and I work from home / little studios. I used to live out here, work out here. I forgot. They've got that VC money. They've got the swag. They've got the ping pong table. They got the podcast studio they let us invade. It's been pretty sweet. They got a wall of mechanical keyboards that each of us kind of nabbed out of one. It's pretty cool for Planet Scale to have us out here to talk AI security stuff during the AI Engineering World's Fair. I guess this is the second year of this conference over at Moscone Center. For those of you that come to RSA every year, Moscone Center doesn't just exist during RSA. It doesn't just like materialize and show up just when 60,000 of us show up. There's about 7,000 people at this one, and it's in Moscone West, this like secret third Moscone off to the side. It's a little smaller and quainter, but it's honestly, the vibes are good. Vibes are high. Everyone's here talking about the same thing.
Yeah. The world of AI is in like a weird spot right now. And I really... I acknowledge for the listener that we're going to talk about AI a lot, but specifically as a security person, it's becoming a topic that is so hard to ignore. Now, if you've watched my YouTube channel, you will know that like a year ago, I did not like AI. I was very anti-AI because the code that it writes was garbage and it couldn't find bugs. So like, what use does it have for me as a security researcher or, a developer, right? But I think with the production of like Sonnet 4.6, there's kind of like this break where like suddenly it was very good and not only producing code, but finding vulnerabilities in code. And today, like the models are a faster reverse engineer than I am. So I'm trying to figure out like where I fit in the world, like with that truth. And so we're hosting a panel today actually at Planet Scale to talk with the panel about like what does the world of security look like with AI as a tool, right? What can you do as not only an engineer or security researcher, but like a developer, right? To make your infrastructure, your code base more safe. So yeah, it'll be a good panel, but interesting stuff, man. Like Fable recently got banned. What's going on with that? I mean, that's a whole can of worms that I'm personally very scared about, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I don't know if you realize you're sitting in the presence of a signator of the Free Fable open letter.
Dude, it's basically the Declaration of Independence. That's pretty rad.
I put my John Hancock on it. So obviously the marketing has worked to some degree of that Mythos and Fable are going to escape the lab and they're going to be the super hacker, right? And you see this crap that coming out in the headlines coming from some senator talked to somebody at the NSA that said that this thing could hack anything. It hacked all the NSA's confidential systems within minutes, and it's way too dangerous to be out there. And it's just, I mean, anyone who knows what they're talking about knows that that's like not actually what's going on with any of these tools. Right. Like, yes, as you just acknowledged, they're very good at code and they're very good at finding vulnerabilities. And the thing that sets Mythos and Fable apart from the Opus 4.6s, that turning point that you're talking about, is not just being able to find the vulnerabilities, but actually write exploits for them, which is the whole Mythos thing and why we're talking about it so much. And they've made this project Glasswing and invite certain people to the walled garden to like get the super secret exploit creator thing. And then Fable was the public version of that with like laughable guardrails. Like we talked about it on our first episode, I think, right? Where like you couldn't even say the word cyber to the damn thing without it being like, you're going back to Opus. Like you can't say the word cyber in Fable land right now. And so, I mean, of course, if you market it as this dangerous, basically nuclear weapon, the government's going to, get a little spicy and get involved. And so they've invoked an export control is actually what they did, right? So they didn't ban it. They didn't say that you and I couldn't do it. They said that people not from the US couldn't have access to it, which effectively Anthropic has no possible way to enforce like upon the public, right? There's just no way. A lot of their employees currently cannot use their own tool under the current regulation that came down. So this is like, we're getting kind of sick of living in unprecedented times, but it's another unprecedented thing, right? And so, yeah, there's this free Fable movement going on. Alex Stamos, ex-CISO of Facebook and Yahoo, and just overall cyber thought leader, I guess. He'll probably hate that I called him that, but has been championing this. And a lot of the people that sign it, the letter even says, hey, it's not that everyone on this list agrees or disagrees about AI regulation. We all just think that the way that this all went down is kind of crazy because Fable and Mythos aren't unique in their ability to find and even hack vulnerabilities. They've just gotten caught up in the marketing and hype of it. I mean, it's still going on. I just read yesterday that another, I think it was another senator, closed door session, said that they saw Mythos drain bank accounts in front of them. And it's just like, no, that's not how security tools work, right? That's not like, maybe it found a vulnerability, sure, but it's not like, oh, this tool went out and drained the bank account, right? That's not like, the secret hacking tool escaped the lab again.
What's really confusing? There are a bunch of confusing points in this whole scenario. The first part is like, people don't realize, I think, that any good researcher that knows how exploitation works can take the primitives that another model like Opus 4.7 or whatever finds and turn them into an exploit. That is the thing that Mythos is uniquely good at, is chaining primitives together. But once you have the primitives, when I say primitive, I mean like arbitrary read, arbitrary write, like use after free, whatever, you can turn those into a meaningful exploit. Like that is not a hard problem. Obviously, the ability to do that automatically and chain them is scary, but like you can find bugs right now with Opus 4.8, 4, whatever one is active and free. You can plug it into Gager MCP and find bugs in closed source software, or go use it on open source software.
Or like, sorry, but shocking, you could find and exploit these things without AI.
Right. Well, exactly. But regarding AI, though, what makes me nervous is we're banning Mythos because something, or banning Fable, something because it's really dangerous at finding vulnerabilities, right? I'm concerned that opinion is being held in the ineptitude of government. And once somebody who's smart in government, and trust me, they do exist, there's just not a lot of them, says, hey guys, we can find bugs without Mythos and Fable. You know that, right? It is the solution to that problem then that we just get all the models banned? Like, is it then illegal for someone not within the Glasswing bubble, the government bubble, to have access to a model capable of exploitation, right? Because again, the models were never designed to find bugs. They were designed to write code so that the models could be profitable. And then by being able to reason about a code base well, it also is very good about reasoning about vulnerabilities in code bases.
Yeah, and it's actually a really good point, because one of the ways that some of the government officials are suggesting the next steps is, could you make the model less good and knowledgeable about security vulnerabilities? Mm-hmm. We want you to be able to use it to code. We just don't want you to be able to use it to hack, right? Because that's scary and we don't know about it. And it's like, if you follow that train of thought, it's like, then the code would be filled with security vulnerabilities. If you could even possibly manage to suck the security knowledge out of these models, which is impossible, right? Of like, use after free or memory safety or whatever it is. It's like, well, no, like, of course it needs to know how to use memory safely, because good developers know how to use memory safely, right? So I actually think it would probably be worth it if we could take a second and actually read some of the points on this free Fable letter, basically verbatim, right? Because I think it's worded really well. We could show it on the screen on the cut, but I'll read it for the audio version, right? So there's a list of things on this letter. It's a very short letter that I've added my name to, and I'm probably bullying low level to do the same. But it says, first, we would like to state some things we believe. AI is having significant impacts on cybersecurity. Like, if you're not in that camp anymore, sorry, that ship has sailed, right? AI is having significant impacts on cybersecurity, including by greatly reducing the difficulty of finding flaws in software and writing exploits for those flaws. Mythos class models are quite good at finding flaws and weaponizing exploits. However, they are not uniquely good at these tasks. This is, I think, the point that you and I are both making right now, right? And many of the undersigned individuals regularly use other foundation and open source models. We'll get back to the open source models in a second, for security audits and red teaming every single day. Anthropic built multiple protections of Fable to the point of it was humorous to the cyber community, because you literally said the word cyber and it kicked you out. And like, this was still good enough for them to pull this off the shelves. It's essential to provide AI to coders and security teams so they can find and fix flaws in their own newly written, as well as decades of legacy code. I think this is the point I want to pause on for a second. This is like my most strongly held belief on this topic. We've had this conversation before. Metasploit is a tool that's open source and filled with exploits. Metasploit is this open source tool. It's filled with exploits. It makes exploitation easier, right? It's like lowering the skill bar of exploitation. You don't need to know how to write a buffer overflow. You need to know how to point Metasploit at a thing and say, find CVE, hack CVE, right? A generation of pen testers have made a career off of just wielding a vulnerability scanner and map and Metasploit, right? And we've had this debate before of, are we lowering the skill bar for exploitation too much? And the answer is no, because otherwise you're just pretending like it's not possible.
This is the same argument, by the way, for the listener. If maybe you're not even a cybersecurity practitioner here, if you've seen the movie Harry Potter, this is literally the defense against the dark arts argument, right? The Ministry of Magic decided that teaching how to cast evil spells was bad because you shouldn't do that. And then the students didn't know how to defend against it. And Harry created this whole band of people that were learning it in secret. But it's the same exact argument, right? Like, in order to know how to defend against these things, how to have a meaningful security posture, you have to know how hacking works. You have to be able to find and exploit the vulnerabilities yourself so you can know how to then defend against them. So the thought that you're able to do coding and security as separate tasks and you can just plop one out of the model is such a uniquely government senator congressman take that it's almost hilarious to see that written down.
You mean this is coming from the people who said, excuse me, TikTok CEO, can you access my Wi-Fi, right?
Mr. Chu, does TikTok access the home Wi-Fi network?
Like this is the kind of people writing this stuff, right? But yeah, like we've settled this debate. Giving defenders the best tools is the best course of action, period. End of discussion, right? Otherwise, you're just ostrich in the sand, pretending like this capability doesn't exist, and it does. And the next bullet on this list is the 1-2 punch to that, because the Chinese open weight models are only months behind the best American models. Not to pull the China boogeyman, right, card that a lot of people like to do in cybersecurity, but it's true. They're out there. And not that the boogeyman is true, but this point is true, that they have these open weight models, the DeepSeeks, the Kimi K2s, the GLM 5.2s, that are like on the heels of the frontier models' capabilities in this space. Alex, who wrote this, gave a talk recently, and he said that they're at most 12 months behind the frontier models in terms of, and when we say open weight models, we mean models that you can literally download and run on your own hardware and just circumvent any regulation or guardrail or whatever it is that might be in place. So, and these are whatever models that the Chinese government is even telling us about, right? So it seems likely that the PRC government has access to private capabilities beyond what it is published. And I think that's just very, very safe to assume, right?
Yeah.
And to pull the best capabilities away from defenders without a good reason when our adversaries are rapidly advancing is dangerous, right? So I just love this list. I think it was worth reading verbatim. I think the other point that I started to make, right, was that not everyone on this list thinks that hey, hands off government, don't touch my AI, right? I think some people probably think that no, this is a scary paced technology, right? The pace of change is very rapid, and the capabilities that it is launching are sensitive, but there's 4 things on this letter that they say, hey, if you're going to regulate models, then the regulation should be 1, grounded in scientific evaluations developed with input from the industry and academia. 2, created through a democratic rulemaking process. 3, enforced transparently and fairly with appropriate time given to remediate it, right? That did not happen at all. This was just a letter that popped out, and Anthropic had to yank this stuff off the shelf because there was no way to limit this whole export control thing. And then 4, used only to the minimal extent necessary to ensure the safety of American public. And I think these are all pretty reasonable asks out of this.
Yeah, 100%. Again, it just goes down a scary path that if the government, not really knowing much about anything, decides to pull one model what says that they're not going to pull the rest of the models? Oh, and also this model is Chinese and open source, so that's also dangerous. And we could go into talking about the Dario comments about open source models, about how Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, says, open source models, because there's no control over them, just like open source hacking tools, etc., are uniquely dangerous and should also be heavily regulated, if not banned. The meme being maker of closed source models says not closed source models are dangerous and should be illegal. Yeah, entering very dangerous territory. I have the same opinion. It's like, I acknowledge that this is a huge shift in the tectonic plates of like the foundation of security, of cybersecurity, and of security research. But to just remove the average person's access to it is very, very knee jerk and definitely not democratic, right?
Yeah, I think the Dario thing is super funny, right? It's like, of course, the head of Anthropic is like, whoa. Right. And I'm seeing a lot of even cybersecurity leaders hop on that comment as well. I'm not sure I fully understand, especially when the open weight models you can run on your own hardware or your own cloud hardware or anything like that. It's not like you're necessarily just, I'm going to now use a Chinese frontier model on their hardware, right? These are open weight models. There's obviously some concerns about, they're not exactly free from their government regulations either over there. So there are some things to be concerned about when you're putting those kinds of models in decision-making loops for your organization, because you do have to take into account like the biases and regulations of the Chinese government that's putting that stuff out.
Yeah, when DeepSeek first came out, it was like a meme to ask it about Tiananmen Square, and like the DeepSeek model would not comment. So, you go any deeper if you want to on that, about like, making wartime decisions or making some kind of vulnerability research decision on maybe a Chinese platform, right? It gets very scary very quick what the amount of power that a model developer has over people in general. And this applies not only to China, but like to Anthropic, to OpenAI. Anyone who's in charge of a frontier model wields unprecedented control over literally humanity. Very scary stuff.
Yeah, I think it's kind of impossible to take specifically frontier American models leadership's word on the dangers of open weight models. I mean, there are some concerns, but I don't think that a lot of those concerns are necessarily handled by using the frontier models instead, right? Like, you can't see inside this. Well, I don't know what's going on inside Claude, right? Like, it's like, a lot of these risks are just risks of using LLMs in general, not necessarily just the open weight models. So I don't know.
Ironically, in kind of the similar funny fashion, so I don't know if you've seen this, but Meta recently restricted the use internally. This came in from a leaked internal memo. Restricted the use of quote unquote competitor model data, referring to the models that are made by OpenAI and Anthropic, because, quote, there could be legal implications if this data is leaked into our models or potentially poisons our models. Yeah, so the funny part about that is, what are the legal implications of all these companies having stolen, quite literally in some cases, literally all of the planet's data to train their models? Why is it only illegal if you get caught as Meta doing it, but if other companies do it to make their models like function, it's not illegal? There's this whole open-ended question about like, is it even legal for Anthropic to have the models in the current way that they argue? And that there's like literally, I think we have receipts of, maybe it was OpenAI, like taking books that were like pirated online and using them to train their models. I think I saw somebody demo how you could literally get one of the models to recite almost word for word, like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or something like that.
Second Harry Potter reference of the podcast.
Hey, there we go. I'm on a Harry Potter kick, dude. It's almost Harry Potter season. So it's very interesting that suddenly we're really worried about the legal implications of models with if AI gets caught with the bag, but anybody else is like, no, you're fine. Or sorry, if Meta does, rather.
Yeah, this brings up some interesting points and thoughts for me. We're seeing a lot of internal enterprise restrictions popping up, like about AI usage in general, because it was like a free for all for a while, right? It's like, hey, you're not allowed to write your own code anymore. Like, you must be AI super pilled 100x engineers. And then all of a sudden, everyone got the bills in the mail at the end of the quarter, and they were like, oh, hey, slow down on that token stuff, everybody, real quick. And a lot of these restrictions are coming out. The other bit about this is just like it's the meme of the surge protector like plugged into itself. This whole industry, right? Like I saw, I was talking to some people here that run some neo clouds, which is even like a new word for me, of these little mini clouds that are purpose built, and some of the AI companies are using because GPUs to that scale were hard to get for so long. So a bunch of people started hoarding them, and there's all sorts of companies popping up for it. And you go and read some of these neo cloud testimonials, and it's like Google and Microsoft and whatever. It's like, oh wait, those are cloud companies. Like they sell compute in mass, and they're using other cloud company. Like I said, surge protector plugged into itself.
100%.
So now you get it not just in compute, but in AI model usage. So like, oh yeah, what is Google and Meta and Microsoft and whatever, like what is their stance internally about using other models? They're all making their own models, right? Mm-hmm. Amazon made their own model. Like everyone's making their, if you're a company of a certain size, everyone was like, we got to make our own model, right? And now, like, yeah, you look at Meta is at the point of training their own model that they're actually worried about their employees using the frontier models, not just for like legal exposure, but they're also worried about the quality they're in, because they're like, wait, now we're like training on training output. And it's like starts to become, the watered down it like incest meme of like, oh, this is not actually high quality stuff anymore.
Yeah. This is the argument about like the overall enslopification of the internet, right? As more and more user generated content comes out of LLMs, and then those LLMs are trained on user generated content, you literally like by definition have a circular process. The question becomes like, what does that boil down to, right? How low can the quality bar get before we realize, okay, there is a structural, issue with the way that we're producing information. And yeah, to your point, I think companies, maybe the smaller ones that have less blindfolds on, less blinders on, are starting to see that, right? There are some companies that are being like, hey, these tokens are extremely expensive. Oh, not even small companies. AWS recently, or Amazon, pulled down their internal company leaderboard for token maxing because, shocker, incentivizing your employees who use tokens for the sake of using tokens is A, expensive, and B, not productive at all. And AWS, again, I ran by Amazon for a long time with basically zero outages. Has had their 2 or 3 biggest outages in the last couple of years, correlated but not maybe causated by AI. So, yeah.
Did you see the meme? It's like the Hall of Fame of useless statistics, and it was like lines of code written in a day, story points closed in a day. Now it's tokens. Yeah, now the lines of tokens used, right? I mean, it's totally true, right? You can't be like, oh, well, look how many tokens they spent. That's how productive they were, right? It's like, oh no, there's tons of ways to just like waste tokens.
I think recently added to that leaderboard was also like Git commits, because we have people that are just like using Claude in a loop, and it's like literally the guy that created OpenClaw or Moltbot or whatever, and then Levels.io are like the number 2, like 1 and 2 on the GitHub commits leaderboard. Like obviously they're AI people, you know what I mean? Like that's how it's going to play out now.
Friend of the show, Zach Corman, was tweeting about kind of dunking on OpenClaw, and the maker responded to him. He was like, hey, can we stop dunking on OpenClaw? Like, yeah, there was some security issues, but like it's been 4 months and like Microsoft is rolling us out now. And then the replies were like, Microsoft famous for never rolling out security vulnerabilities. Like, yeah, in 4 months, wow, you must have solved it. Like all security solved.
Yeah, when Satya was at the conference where he said like they were going to integrate OpenClaw into Windows, I saw so many subtweets on that of literally like 5 months ago, Microsoft being like, OpenClaw, plenty of vulnerabilities, unsecure, like don't use it. So, how the turntables when OpenAI is involved.
There's one more interesting point on this meta bit. I pulled up this article, right? That right at the end, and it's kind of like snuck in here, buried the lead a little bit, right? But it's like it says the forward-looking question is whether Anthropic and OpenAI can build enterprise-grade deployment options that satisfy the data residency requirements of AI native companies. And at the end, they kind of squirrel an editor's note that says, watch whether Anthropic and OpenAI respond with on-premise or air-gapped deployment options. This is this like my spidey senses went ding, because I used to work for a large bank, Bank of America. I don't care. I can say it. It's on my LinkedIn. But this was like a major thing there pre-AI, right? I got hired there to be like head of cloud security architecture. And then I walk in the door and I was like, oh, basically every policy document here says don't use the cloud. Like it's like all data all the bank's data need to stay in the bank. You can't send data over there. That's not the bank. Right. And so a lot of large enterprises have these like massive like policies, compliance, regulations, government regulations, whatever it is that say like your data and your customers' data cannot go touch that other system without XYZ like million controls in place. I know some cybersecurity startups that I've been talking to that are really kind of behind, and they feel scared that they're falling behind on the whole AI curve because they have contractual obligations with government contracts that say that none of that government department data can touch an AI thing. And now the company's like, well, we can't like we're not big enough to like have GovCloud at our company that like, oh, those contracts only touch this copy of our system. It's like, no, their system is their system.
Or conveniently acquire like an H200 rack for $250,000.
Right.
Whatever. Like we don't have that kind of money.
Right. And so their option right now is to just not. And so now they're like, well, crap. Like, are we, how many years behind the curve now? Because we are like contractually obligated to not use these kinds of coding systems because of these contractual obligations. So this is why my spidey senses went up is like, oh yeah, like, that snuck in at the end of this article that like Meta's not going to be the first one to publicly say, hey, we can't do this. I'm sure the big financials have like whole little research teams off doing cool AI stuff. And then the rest of the employees, like multiple hundreds of thousands of employees at the US's biggest banks, are not allowed to use these tools, I'm sure, right? Yeah. Unless they have like their own internal copy or something like that. And so, yeah, it's gonna be super interesting to see what they spit out that the enterprises can actually use.
Yeah. Yeah, takeaway for the viewer, for the listener. I mean, it's an interesting world out there. I don't think there's too much dooming to be done yet. I think though AI is still in a very like transitionary state. We're trying to figure out what to actually do with this technology, right? In the world of finding bugs, it is scary where the regulation may go on AI, but I think the best thing you can do as like maybe a practitioner, go play with them. Go and use the models. Well, first of all, go download one before they're illegal. Then after that, go use the models and see if you can find some bugs. Go see what they're capable of doing. It's really neat to see them operate. Like whatever you think about like the efficacy or the ethics behind AI, watching them operate and like find bugs or like reason about a code base is honestly like magical to watch it operate. So I highly recommend everyone at least go give it a shot and see what messes you can find.
Yeah, this is what I said about the free Fable thing, right? Is like, you can't ostrich your head in the ground and pretend that this isn't happening just because you have like feelings about some of the stuff going on.
Which was me, by the way. Like I literally was that way up until like Opus 4.6. And I was like, okay, maybe it's time to try it out. And I did. And I was like, wow, it's actually really impressive.
I had a lot of similar opinions to you, but I was still kicking the tires on this stuff all the time, just not on anything I cared about, right? I was just like trying to keep up with, because like all the harnesses that are coming out right now, like there's like the new hot word, because a lot of the capabilities at the most frontier models that are super expensive or banned by the government, you can replicate a lot of those capabilities with the right harnesses around some of the still available and cheaper models. And these kinds of harnesses have existed for a while to try to, like, especially pre-Opus 4.6 when the quality sucked, and that's what you were seeing. And a lot of us that were like really, really staying at the tip of the spear were like, yeah, I get it, but we're not using the out-of-the-box models. We're using the out-of-the-box with like 3 different tools layered on top of it to make sure that, it was before loops were cool. Right. Like we had stuff that was looping. We, all sorts of stuff. There's, been this community of kind of hackers doing a lot of this. And so, that's all still going on. And so, yeah, I just like, we can't pretend that it's not. We have to get our hands on it to just like see what the capabilities are actually materializing.
100%.
Hey hackers, before we keep going, I want to take a quick break and say a quick thank you to our sponsors. Today's Lowdown episode is sponsored by our friends over at Maze. Maze has spent the last couple of years using AI to find and remediate vulnerabilities in the cloud. And now they've released Maze Code, AI agents that find and deeply investigate vulnerabilities in your code. Now, we all know the deal. Software composition analysis tools and SaaS toolings are all historically really bad at just making more noise. They find issues that may not actually be real and just create a lot of problems for your engineers to deal with that don't solve real security vulnerabilities. I get it. We've been there. Maze Code is a really cool tool because Maze Code actually knows how your code works. Maze Code investigates every finding with the context of how your code is actually deployed. Sure, you're using a version of libxml2 that's vulnerable, but the actual code path to hit that vulnerability is not exposed in your Docker image. Maze Code can find that and won't show you that that vulnerability is a big deal. Every vulnerability that Maze Code reports comes with evidence that it's real and a way to fix it. Check out Maze at go.lowdownpod.com/maze. That's go.lowdownpod.com/maze. Thanks again, Maze. Let's keep going.
All right, we promise we'll stop talking about AI. We'll move on to a couple bugs here and there. Some interesting bugs found actually in the Apple Beats by Dre, a vulnerability in the Bluetooth stack that allows you to, what is this? Get remote code execution on a pair of headphones. Interesting sentence I just said there. How is that possible, Matt? What are we doing?
Yeah, I covered this one in a video last week because anytime I've seen these bugs before, like on AirPods or other headphones, and the public does not like these because guess what? Like we're all like sticking speakers and microphones to our head most of the day. I walk around my AirPods are like my most used piece of technology. I walk around with an AirPod in a lot of my day. And when you have a security vulnerability in a microphone and speaker attached to most people, they tend to not like it, right? They're not like, oh man, can't wait for this hacker to listen into the microphone. And that's what this vulnerability would have allowed, which is kind of crazy. The caveat being, of course, with a lot of these Bluetooth vulnerabilities is you did need to be within physical range of the device that you were hacking. That's not really like a warm and cozy, you know, if someone goes to a conference like this filled with 7,000 people and you can walk around with a nice antenna in your backpack. I mean, these were the DEF CON of old vulnerability, like hacks back in the day, right? Or even like RFID, early RFID things that would ping off of random antennas and stuff like this. But yeah, you do need to be within range of it. You're going to be way better at talking about the actual vuln than me. The one point that I will bring up before I toss it back to you is that this vulnerability was discovered a year ago.
Yeah. So we can talk about kind of the nature of the bug and like the disclosure timeline. So like I said before, this bug, it gives you remote code execution on any device that uses a specific Bluetooth chip and Bluetooth SDK in particular, the software development kit. It's called the, I'm going to pronounce this wrong potentially, AIR-OA, the word AIR, OHA, Bluetooth Audio SDK. The way that it works is literally the researchers that found it found a protocol that is implemented in the firmware of this controller. They called it the RACE protocol. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, and it's also not like the real acronym. It's what they made up about this protocol. But effectively, it is a hidden, non-advertised service on the Bluetooth chip that is meant to be for debugging the device. That gives you the ability to do arbitrary memory reads to RAM, arbitrary memory writes to RAM, and the ability to do over-the-air firmware updates. And you can use that information to leak the Bluetooth key about the device. You can use that to connect to the device without pairing to it properly, and ultimately use it to initiate phone calls, listen to the microphone data on the headphones while they're paired to another device. You basically get total control over the headphones. Kind of a fun fact, you also could push a bad firmware update and brick the device. You know, what you get from bricking headphones of a friendly neighbor, and I really couldn't tell you. But yeah, it's a scary attack. And this is kind of what you said before. Like the only attack nowadays that really matters when it comes to like proximal stuff, like if you're at DEF CON and you're afraid of getting popped or things like this, it's the low level. It's the name of my YouTube channel. The low level vulnerabilities in the firmware of controllers, like your Wi-Fi controller, your baseband controller, your Bluetooth controller. These are the areas that get the least attention from people because the density of the skill set of people on planet Earth that know how to like extract this stuff, find bugs, and exploit them is increasingly low. Again, to mention AI again, I apologize. This is why AI is being touted as like this vulnerability research tool, is because the models, not trying to personify them, but like are really good at like learning about a specific technology. You give it a binary and say, hey, this lives inside this microchip. It can deduce bugs like this. So yeah, there have been patches that have been fixed, that have fixed this. The reason this broke the news, by the way, is one of the line of Apple headphones, so not AirPods, but the Beats Studio Buds that Apple now produces, uses this chip and uses the SDK and therefore was vulnerable to it. The patch just came out about a week ago at this point, June 19th. The interesting part, though, going back to the disclosure timeline, the researchers that found this vulnerability found it in March of 2025. they didn't get contact from the SDK developer until May of 2025. And then they worked with various manufacturers that make headphones that use this SDK. So it was like Sony, Marshall, a couple other companies to figure out how they can quickly put out updates before going and disclosing this live at 39C3, something Chaos Convention. It's a conference that happens. It's a hacker conference. And so, that went live, and then Apple kind of kicked it off and made it more public by pushing out a patch to fix this vulnerability in these beats. So, takeaway for the viewer, if you use a headphone that uses this SDK and you've been using them since this vulnerability came out, the timeline for when the vulnerability got created, no one really knows. We definitely know someone knew about it, the researchers in March. There is a world where your headphones could have bad firmware in them and could be doing evil stuff to you. What does that mean? Maybe you get new headphones. Maybe you make sure your firmware is patched. A couple courses of action there, but
yeah, these kinds of firmware updates, I always hate, because it's like we can't get people to hit the restart my browser button, right? Like these kinds, they should get updated automatically. Like if you're connected to power and within Bluetooth range of your phone or your computer that it's paired with. I remember a few AirPods vulnerabilities very similar to this. And I remember being pretty frustrated trying to get the damn thing to catch a firmware update. And there's like no interface. It's not like you can push buttons on your AirPods and like get it to like update, right? It's like, okay, the thing said plug it in and leave it near my Mac and thing. I remember it taking me like a few days to I was like, okay, I gotta like leave this plugged in next to this. Like, okay, let me unplug it. Let me restart my phone or restart, like just a lot of just weird troubleshooting and checking the firmware settings. And I wasn't catching the update.
I think even in that scenario, like you were lucky in that you were trying to update a piece of hardware that lived within the Apple ecosystem. I would imagine if you're in the Sony ecosystem, or like, I think there was one line of Bose headphones. If you don't have like the Sony app on your phone or the Bose app on your phone, you're probably not getting an update from these companies unless you go and seek it out by installing the app and running it. And again, if you're listening to this podcast, you're a security conscious person. A lot of people on planet Earth aren't, and they're not going to update the firmware on their headphones, right? So there's going to be a lot of people walking around planet Earth that will still be open to this, right? So kind of a scary thing.
And we'll never get stats on this one because you can't scan the internet for this. This is a proximity thing. So we'll never really fully understand, like, well, was that patch like successful in rolling out automatically to people like at a large enough clip? Like this is like a decent one to, keep in the arsenal, if you're a pen tester or something like that, to see what's out there and what's in people's pockets. This is a frustrating one. We can't get people to update the firmware on their Wi-Fi routers that are like very sensitive to over the internet attacks. Never mind, like, oh, let me check my Beats firmware settings somewhere in some, hidden menu. It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah, the adage of the S in IoT stands for security continues to live on. Not necessarily that headphones are IoT, but it seems that like anything embedded tends to have bugs. Again, I think the reason being that they tend to have the least amount of eyes on them, and so the least amount of scrutiny, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean this one was also kind of a cool POC that they released because it was also able to initiate and receive calls and also read off of the memory of the device, which apparently actually did include some like call history type information on your head. Like you just wouldn't think, right, that my Bluetooth headphones might have a copy of my call history or the ability to initiate phone calls and stuff like that. But of course they do, right? If you hit they have tap functionality or whatever it is. Anyway, kind of a spicy one in my opinion, and especially that it's been out for a year before the patch even came out. And this POC dropped a while ago too.
I'm shocked this didn't get more attention. I feel like this would be a thing you'd hear more about. I mean,
it's proximity. It's because it's proximity.
Yeah. But still, go to a conference like DEF CON. My point being there is like that's kind of the only bug that matters anymore is like this kind of attack. Like if you connect to the DEF CON Wi-Fi, you're actually fine. Yeah. Like literally, unless you have like an unpatched Windows 10 box, you're going to be A-okay. But a bug like this is like actually a big deal.
It's probably the most watched network,
right?
Like the knock there. Have you ever taken a tour of it? I mean, it's probably got the most eyeballs on it with the most talent density of spotting shitty behavior on it than any network at any point. So yeah, you're good. People bring burners or whatever. No, you're fine, right? But yeah, this is kind of a spicy one. I mean, I'm not even thinking about DEF CON or like a crowded environment like that. Super targeted towards like government officials or people that might bring their headphones in a pocket into a room with insider information that might move the stock market. Like, I mean, like microphone attacks are spicy, and especially ones that would not really throw a lot of detections. Like if you have to pop someone's laptop to get access to their microphone, good luck, right? But what kind of EDR is going to fire on your Beats, like RCE, right?
Ed's headphones are beaconing to China. What is happening right now? Like,
yeah, kind of spicy. The POC was actually pretty gnarly too, in like exfiltrating the info and eavesdropping on conversations and call history and all that. So kudos to the researchers to even release like a polished POC like that too.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, what's next?
Speaking of researchers, Nightmare Eclipse is making waves. You want to talk about that?
What don't we want to talk about on Nightmare Eclipse? So this one, I think this is the story that just keeps on giving. And I think there's more to it than the public knows. I've talked to a fair few people that might have some inside info on this one, that basically have given me the, like, I can't tell you anymore. You don't have all the info. The news doesn't have all the info. There's lots of stuff going on. And if you read between the lines in Nightmare Eclipse's like comms and blogs that he's putting out, it's obviously like in turmoil, right? There's much more going on between him and Microsoft than we know about in the blogs. And Microsoft, being a big corporation, can't exactly come out and be like, well, you see our lawsuit that's going on over here. There's some rumblings that they're actually an insider, or they were an insider.
Yeah.
And so I think that I've heard from a few credible sources that might actually be a possibility.
For those of you missing context, by the way, Nightmare Eclipse is a researcher that was on GitHub, and for fun, they dropped at this point like 6 or 7 Windows Defender or some kind of Windows 0 day that give you a local account to system escalation. The reason they're dropping these 0 days is apparently they tried to submit a couple of these to MSRC, the Microsoft Security Response Center, which runs the Microsoft Bug Bounty program, right? So a bug like that, where you can escalate from one account to the other. Actually, technically, MSRC doesn't respect the admin to system boundary, but if you're like a normal user, they will pay you for an LPE. Apparently, they submitted these bugs, or at least one of them, to MSRC. MSRC said, nope, does not meet the bug bar. Sorry, they don't give the money for the bug, and they said, okay, F you, and they kick it off to the rest of the world. Yeah, as Matt was alluding to before, there's some rumors that person may be A, fairly young, because you can kind of read in the way that they write. B, in some kind of turmoil, like financial or otherwise, because they said like they're living out of their car because of Microsoft and Tom Gallagher, who was like the lead of MSRC, right? Calling him out. So yeah, definitely not the most stable person. You can read that from not only their text, but also dropping 7 0 days publicly for fun. But yeah, so the most recent one is Rogue Planet, which is a pretty interesting exploit. If you are a defender and you're listening to this, there actually is no patch for Rogue Planet right now at the time of this recording. So if you want to look for the IOCs, we'll put a link to maybe an article that has them. But basically, it's a vulnerability in a race condition in Defender, right? So Microsoft Windows Defender is the called EDR antivirus that lives on Windows. And so when Windows is scanning for viruses, if it sees a file that is potentially malicious, what it's going to do is scan the file, put it somewhere for quarantine, do more research on it, do more scanning on it, and then go put it back. Okay. Well, the time in between it taking the file and putting it back, there's a race condition where you can put what's called an op lock in Windows, an operational lock, so that Windows Defender gets blocked on its operation. And effectively, the exploit replaces the now considered safe file with a piece of malware, and then uses what effectively in Windows is a symlink to point the temporary directory back to System32, and then bada bing, bada boom, Microsoft with Defender is putting malware over a legitimate Windows service. They use the Windows Event Manager in the example, but you could use any system level service. So race conditions are alive and well in the year of our Lord 2026. And yeah, there's no patch for this right now. The IOCs that companies like, for example, ThreatLocker put out are you can look for programs that are not Windows Defender using the Windows Defender DLL is like the main one, because they use that API to do the scanning and the replacement of the file. But a crazy exploit, not only just to exist, but like to be dropping publicly for free. Yeah,
you explained this to me before we hit record, and it just blew my mind, right? That the exploit actually just holds the file in place before Defender can like do the Defender thing on it. I mean, that's sick. That's just like really creative stuff. Yeah, the Nightmare Eclipse saga, I've heard it described as painful disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
You've got responsible disclosure, and then what's going on here is painful disclosure. It's just like one after the other of these public POCs dropping. I also read this one. Is this the same one? I don't have it on my screen, where the POC that they put out was for Windows 10 and 11, but it actually does work on Windows Server. The Nightmare Eclipse said this POC will not work on Windows Server, but this vulnerability does exist. You just need to go tweak the POC.
Yeah. So the way that the POC that's public works is they give you an ISO file that is mounted as read only, and you trigger the actual vulnerability on the ISO. But then you make like a writable copy locally and use that to do the junction exploit, right? So the reason it's not vulnerable on server is you can't mount ISOs as a non-privileged user on server, but I imagine through some other file system voodoo, you can make a file that is read-only somewhere, copy it somewhere else. Effectively, what I'm saying is you don't need the ISO, I believe, to make this vulnerability work, because at the end of the day, the real vulnerability has nothing to do with the ISO. It has to do with the time of check, time of use race condition in Defender, checking the file and putting it back where it found it. And so if you can figure out a way to execute that without the need for an ISO file, the server is fair game too.
Yeah, I think the larger picture here too, besides this, I mean, it's a bunch of these exploits have been super cool. The POC, I mean, Yellow Key was crazy, right? The BitLocker stuff. This is obviously a talented researcher, and like you said, obviously, going through something,
right?
Legally going through something, from what it seems like as well. But what it's brought to light, and I think we've talked about this a fair bit on camera, both of us already, but like the reputation of your bug handling team, it should be considered sacred for security teams. Right. So yeah, obviously Nightmare Eclipse isn't the only game in town when it comes to being able to find exploits in large enterprise products. And I think the larger picture here is that the reputation of your bug handling system and team, like MSRC, should be considered sacred for security teams out there, because what this is like brought to light. I know we've both have kind of beat this to a pulp on camera before, but the community has like collectively experienced a lot of pain interacting with a lot of these large enterprise bug bounty programs, or even just disclosure processes. And Microsoft being one of the bigger ones, right? They have a very large code footprint out there on the internet and on hardware and everything. Full of code that is, let's say, target rich, right? In terms of the kind of vulnerabilities that we're talking about. And over again, the researchers seem to be running into a few issues. And I think the security community is pretty used to this being a difficult process, because it's a hard one to get right. Is at scale having to go through this triage process. Have you ever lived it? Have you ever had to like triage a bunch of like output from tools?
Oh yeah. That was my job before I quit my last job exclusively. It's horrendous.
It's painful, right? And so like I think we all understand that, like, I've been on both sides of this. Sure. I've disclosed bugs to bug bounties. I'm early Google bug bounty receiver, right? And I've been on the other side triaging findings of both scanners and humans. The quality varies greatly, right? And so I think there's a certain tolerance that the community has to understanding what the other side of this is like. But the thing that keeps happening that I think people are starting to revolt against due to the, maybe Nightmare Eclipse is a match being thrown into a powder keg of like pent up frustration around this issue. Not even just Microsoft, right? We're seeing very similar stuff come out about Apple and their handling of things, and some other programs, other big programs, is when a bug gets disclosed, the process is hard, slow, painful, not very communicative, any combination of the above, then the response is lackluster. So either you get marked as a duplicate with very little information, or you get marked as not actually a severe security issue. And then the 1-2 punch that I think is what's getting specifically MSRC in a lot of trouble is, and then fixing the vulnerability anyway.
Right.
And then not crediting the researcher for it, right? And that's what I think is going on here.
Yeah, that is the difficult balance of this. Yeah, so from a timeline perspective, I understand the timelines, because the amount of reports they probably get and the amount of people that they don't have to triage these varying quality vulnerability reports of a bug that may or may not actually be real, especially with AI, creates, an internal inertia to solve the problem. So like herd on that 100%. But it does get very hairy where it's like, okay, like this is a real bug in the software. Our company is incentivized to have a better product, but also like because of what the bug bounty contract legally says, we don't have to give you any money. So what do we do with that? And yeah, Microsoft's got caught with their pants down multiple times on not acknowledging the researcher in the CVE. 60 days will go by, the CVE comes out, the bug is fixed, and they don't hear anything. They don't get an email back, right? Which obviously is not the right answer. So it's a difficult balance, and Microsoft has not been very good at finding the center point.
Yeah, and I think I zoom out here not just to like dunk on MSRC, or anything like that. It's more just to say like this isn't going to be it. Like it's not going to be Nightmare Eclipse is going to be the only person out here publicly disclosing POCs for stuff because the responsible, which I'm putting in air quotes because the responsible part is a two-way street, and there's like a social contract there of like, hey, all right, the agreed upon path now is you've broken your side of the social contract. The agreed upon path as the community is public disclosure to like get you to act right, like
or just to acknowledge for the security of the community that the bug exists, right? That's kind of the whole point of disclosing. Like, hey man, your laptop has a vulnerability in it. Figure it out so you don't get hacked, right? That's kind of the whole point.
Yeah, the goal here is for us all to have a more secure internet,
right,
and devices, not for like the multi-trillion-dollar corporation to have like a good day and like the cheapest, quickest path possible to like whatever it is that they're doing, right? That's like not our incentive, right? Our incentive is, hey, I found a bug that can like cause some serious pain on the internet. You wrote it. I'm now telling you about it. Like, let's do this whole thing and like get this fixed. And instead it's like I said, slow, painful, no credit, bug gets fixed anyway. It's like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I on this side doing this? You a favor.
Yeah. There is an incentives problem too, where I think with, again, AI, with AI being as prevalent as it is, as good at finding bugs it is, the market value of these bugs is going to shift dramatically, right? Like again, like you should be doing it for the love of the game, for the love of the internet, right? But like people have to pay their bills. And so a lot of people do this for money. And it's, if you can find a vulnerability in Hyper-V or in Windows Defender or whatever, and you get paid $100,000 for it, of course you're going to go and do that. But if people now get paid maybe $1,000 because like everyone's doing it now, like where does the incentive go? Do they now go to the black market and sell it for the same value? Do they now just go public and become an influencer because now they can get that kind of clout with a bug like that, And then does that make the internet less secure over time, right?
Yeah, I mean, and even the black market or whatever, like we're seeing, I recently covered and talked to the researchers who found Karuna and Darksword, these two iOS exploits, and they called it a $40 million exploit kit that was just on a watering hole website, not even targeted, on like a Chinese crypto scam website for one of them, and then like a Ukrainian like dating site on another. And these are the kinds of things that usually governments point at specific individuals, like political opponents, dissidents, journalists, unfortunately, like stuff like this. And they just like put it out on a website. And like, that's why these researchers were able to just find it and like, RE it and do all the stuff that they did with it. And I asked them pointedly, I said, did they not know what they had or did they not care? And the researchers that I verified said, I don't think they cared. And they're like, what does that tell us? Does that tell us the value of a $40 million exploit kit is approaching zero for them to be able to just do that? Do they think that they can dial up another iOS 0 day or 23 of them that were in this exploit kit? Like there was 23 exploits under Karuna's like umbrella that like chained it all together to do these 0-click things, right? You go to a website in Safari that had Karuna on it, they had RCE. That's good. That's not one vuln, right? That's a chain of vulns.
Yeah. By the way, guys, gray market value for one of those exploits is like $4 to $8 million.
Yeah. So the whole thing, they said it was. I've never heard people speak about an exploit kit the way I've heard really smart people talk about Karuna. The words like elegant and beautiful, and like they were just fawning over this exploit kit. And if you guys don't know the background, it was written by U.S. government contractors, L3Harris and Trenchant, and then leaked, and the guy who leaked it is in jail.
Yeah, this is the one, the L3Harris guy that sold it to a Russian, right?
Yeah. So a Russian exploit broker who then sold it to both Russian buyers and Chinese buyers. So it wound up on this Chinese crypto scam website. Like I said, they couldn't have been brokered for that much money then at that point. because of how it was then used, right? There's no way you're spending $40 million to use it on like a crypto scam website, right? That's like not going to return that. And so, yeah, are we starting to see the tips of like the exploit, even dark market crash, right? In value is super interesting. It's like, oh yeah, where's the economics of this all go if AI gets really good at writing this stuff?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize every time I say AI like you.
Yeah, I know.
It's just the nature of the beast, right?
It's a reflex from YouTube because my YouTube audience is not a huge AI fan. You know,
I get it, and I do get the revolt, right? Everyone's like permanent underclass scared, and like everyone's like, oh, the other thing that I'll just say, like, can we go on a tangent here really quick because we keep apologizing?
We got 5 minutes to do it.
So like, I am of the camp that all these companies that are doing tens of thousands of layoffs under the guise of AI are full of shit, right? Like, so everyone who's like anti-AI because it thinks it's going to like eat everyone's jobs and like all the water on the planet, I think all of these things are actually not happening. I think these giant megacorps just have to do those layoffs so often, or not have to, but like do those layoffs so often. And the reason they come in waves is not actually like a macroeconomic thing. It's a PR thing. It's like they're all peers of each other. And like if Oracle can point to Microsoft and go, well, yeah, look, the AI
right,
and the economy, that's why we had to cut 30,000 people. And not that like, hey, by the way, like if we can keep revenue here and like corporate Ozempic ourselves down to like here and get rid of like 15% of our most expensive thing, which is, you know, our CapEx, right? On like all of these people, like, why wouldn't we do that? And the PR case is, well, yeah, of course AI, right? Because they want to seem like they're at the forefront. There's no effing way. I know the people at the like tip of the spear of AI, and especially at those kinds of organizations, there's no way they're like taking 30,000 jobs worth of output and like justifying AI. I will say at like a small scale, companies that like can't afford to, like startups and like smaller companies, are definitely running a little leaner these days, and maybe not hiring that like social media person because they're just, we'll have AI generate our LinkedIn posts until we can afford a real person because they realize the quality is lower, or like, oh, we're not hiring that role. Like, you know, they're pinching pennies in the smaller side. I just think, I don't know. Maybe it's tinfoil hat of me, but I think on the large enterprise side,
no, right. I agree with
bananas.
You. I run tinfoil hat on most things. Whenever you think you have the answer for why a large entity is behaving a certain way, you probably don't have the full story.
Yeah. So like, I don't know if that helps the like anti-AI crowd for like looking at the thing that they think is going to like eat all the jobs. I just don't think that's like coming. I think that's all like, I don't think that all of the AI stuff is all marketing. Right. I get yelled at a lot by like people on the internet because I am talking about Mythos capabilities and exploit development and whatever. And they're like, you're falling for the marketing. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not going off of Dario's press release. I'm going off like Project Glasswing members, like who I know and respect in this industry are like, oh, this thing found RCE like while I slept, right?
Yeah, you can acknowledge that like it could be marketing and it also could be good, or it could be somewhere in the middle where like it's just yes, they're obviously using this to like generate a little bit of fear, and then at the same time, it is a better model objectively.
Yeah, but like what happened? They got banned because their marketing was so good, right? So like people bought their marketing and they marketed themselves into a regulation situation. Anyway, I don't know if that like calms AI nerves or whatever as we talk about it, but like probably not. But
and on that note, we'll wrap it. For those of you listening, we do appreciate it. Follow us on Spotify. Hit subscribe on YouTube. And what are our closing remarks, Matt? What should we be doing? What's the next play?
I think just in general, just want to say like we started this. I don't know. Should we like pull the curtain back a little bit on like stuff going behind the scenes? We recorded a few episodes of this, by the way, but we caught some attention of some sponsors and stuff like this, and we had to pause and like get everything together. We're doing this. Like we're here in person to like do this. We're gonna do this at least weekly. We've committed to it. We're like looking to grow the team to help us behind the scenes. I mean, yeah. So if you're here and if you've lasted this long, you've at least heard of us, and you're here and you're chilling. We want to hear what you want to see out of this. We're gonna we have already like 2 or 3 exciting guests lined up. We're gonna start doing some interviews. Those of you going to Black Hat and DEF CON, we're going to do some cool stuff in Vegas, live shows and interviews and stuff like that. So if you're here, be here. It's going to be cool. We're kind of joining forces, Low Level and Matt J a bit, right? Like the YouTube conglomeration here. And yeah, let us know where you're listening to this. I want to know, we're obviously doing YouTube first, but it's a podcast. It's our first like official podcast as a bunch of YouTubers and Instagrammers. So I want to know if people are listening on like podcast apps, stuff like this. Reach out. We read the stuff that you guys send our way, both good and bad.
This is a very personal like interaction, right? You're listening to us talk to each other for over an hour, right? I want to know what your take is, like what you took away from this, what you liked and didn't like. We love feedback, so please give it to us, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
All right.